Ashton Jeanty and Travis Hunter have both had incredible years throughout this college football season, with Ashton going for 2,497 yards, 29 touchdowns on 7.3 yards per carry, and with Travis going for over 1,100 yards, 15 touchdowns, along with 4 interceptions on defense. It's no surprise that both of these legendary players got invited to New York for the Heisman ceremony. And a big shout out to Travis Hunter, who is actually this year's recipient of the Heisman Award. But today, we will be simming the entire careers of both of these guys to figure out which one turns out greater. And we'll have a few questions along the way. Who ends their career with a higher overall? Who wins the most championships? And who wins the most awards? Well, we're about to find that out today, as we follow both of these now legendary players on their roads to glory. Now that Travis Hunter has won his Heisman, he's about to get ready to finish his career in the Alamo Bowl, while Ashton Jeanty has to take care of some business in the college football playoffs. And the first game that he'd be entering into would be against Arizona State, and Ashton Jeanty was doing what he usually does to help his team secure a victory, as Boise State would go on to beat the brakes off of Arizona State, blowing them out 38-17. But Ashton and the Boise State Broncos had some more work to do against a better team, the Ohio State Buckeyes. Now, Ashton had been playing well throughout this game, but it wasn't enough to keep this offense from being consistent. But it doesn't really seem like it's his fault at all, especially considering his quarterback's throwing interceptions in the red zone. And then Ohio State would eventually go on to score a touchdown to make it a 2-possession game. But Boise State was still driving down the field and eventually got right back to the goal line, where the quarterback had finally got another touchdown to bring this game to 1 possession and earn themselves a chance to come up big on defense. And they actually held Ohio State to this 3rd down and 5, the biggest play of the year at this point, with somebody having the opportunity to make a play. Unfortunately, it turned out to be Ohio State, as this wide receiver breaks free and scores a touchdown to pretty much put this game on ice and close out the final game of the college career of Ashton Jeanty, with Ohio State going on to win this game 31-16. But when you take a look at the stats, one could assume that if they gave the ball to Ashton more than 10 times, then they probably would have won the game. Nevertheless, that was it for Ashton Jeanty's college football career, as he was positive that he's ready to enter his name in this upcoming NFL draft. And so was his Heisman running mate Travis Hunter. So with both of these guys having accomplished everything that they needed to in college, it was time for them to enter the NFL draft.
Tell them to bring me my money. Yeah!
And now that we're here at the 2025 NFL draft, there's already some familiar faces being taken off the board. We see Shedeur Sanders heading to the Raiders like he probably wanted to all along. Cam Ward headed to the Giants like he's been highly projected to. But now at the number 9th pick, something very unexpected happens, because the Washington Commanders traded up and they selected Travis Hunter. Somehow he slipped this far in the draft, but at least it wasn't as far as Ashton Jeanty, who with the 20th overall pick, he was finally selected by the Dallas Cowboys. And they're definitely going to need him, because the Dallas Cowboys are catastrophically, horrifically down atrocious at this point. An absolutely disgrace of a franchise. Now, on the other hand, Travis Hunter was in an excellent situation in Washington. They were going to allow him to play both ways, and he and his new quarterback, Jaden Daniels, were bound to make some big plays. And no, I am not trying to rhyme, but we will start by simming their careers to midway through their first season. And this is kind of crazy, because Ashton Jeanty only has 200 yards in 6 games. Meanwhile, Travis Hunter has 300 yards in 6 games, but he does also have 25 receptions and 2 touchdowns, so not bad for a rookie. Not to mention on defense, he already had 13 total tackles and 1 tackle for loss. And by the end of their rookie years, it was Travis who had an opportunity to answer one of the main questions, as he was about to get a chance to win a Super Bowl. Now, as far as major awards, we didn't really expect him to win any, so it's not really surprising. What is kind of surprising is that neither of these players even made it in the top 5 of the Offensive Rookie of the Year award, with the honors ultimately going to lowercase Jalen Milroe. Now, as far as end-of-season stats, Ashton had a little over 600 yards and 8 touchdowns, and Travis had gone for over 850 yards and 62 receptions, along with 45 tackles on defense, 5 pass deflections, and 2 interceptions. Now, unfortunately, Washington would go on to get cooked in the first round of the playoffs. But even worse than that, somehow the Kansas City Chiefs found a way to pull off some more black magic and win another Super Bowl, beating out the Philadelphia Eagles for the 2nd time in 3 years. But that's all good though, because both of these guys are looking like they're ready to get into their 2nd season and help their teams win a ring. And now it's time to get into their first game of the year against each other, as Dallas is set to face off against Washington. And in this game, both of these guys were making all kinds of great plays. Travis Hunter even broke free for a touchdown in the first quarter to give Washington the early lead. and things were looking kind of stalemated for a while up until Washington had decided to take control of the game in the second half. Eventually, Dak Prescott would find a guy in the back of the end zone for a touchdown to cut the lead down. But at that point, it was already too little too late, because Washington ended up pulling it out 17-10, with Ashton Jeanty going for 31 yards off of only 10 attempts, and Travis Hunter going for only 2 catches but a touchdown, and 4 tackles to go along with it on defense. Now this turned out to be a season where neither of these players' teams made the playoffs, nor was either player in consideration for any major award this season. In Ashton's case, he had a better season than he did the previous year by about 80 yards, and Travis Hunter had actually regressed on offense. It was now the third option for wide receiver for Washington after finishing his rookie season as the first. Regardless, now in Season 3, we are checking out the Dallas Cowboys roster, and I do not see Micah Parsons. Now, for a while, I was wondering where he was until I realized that he had just had his contract year. And apparently, the Dallas Cowboys decided not to re-sign him, but the Chicago Bears did. So Dallas definitely got worse, as the only person above 90 on their team now is CeeDee Lamb, while the Commanders had a pretty decent amount of solid players on their team, and Travis Hunter definitely being one of them. We sim to the playoff once again to see if either of these teams make it in, and the Commanders actually do grab a spot, but I am not surprised about the Cowboys. What I am surprised about is that we have still yet to see Ashton or Travis in the running for Offensive Player of the Year, let alone MVP. But it turns out that Ashton did get his first award, as he goes on to win the league's best running back, after a season with 10 touchdowns and 950 yards on the ground. To go along with over 400 more yards through the air with another 4 touchdowns, I'd say it's an award well deserved. Now Travis still hadn't hit his stride yet as a receiver, but he was still improving. On defense, he actually had his best season yet, going for 75 tackles, 1.5 sacks, and 3 interceptions. But neither Washington or Dallas had made the playoffs this year, so we are going to be simming to next season. Now going into year 4, Travis is actually an 87 overall at both positions, and also worked his way up to being a superstar on the defensive side of the ball. But Ashton Jeanty was also tied with Travis with an 87 overall, and a superstar developmental trait to match. Now we are about to start simming this season towards the playoffs, but we gotta make a pit stop at week 15, because there is now another huge matchup between these two great players, with the Dallas Cowboys having the implications to win in order to get into the playoffs. So Ashton Jeanty and the Dallas Cowboys knew that they had to lock in, especially since they were set to face off against Travis Hunter and the Washington Commanders. Now this was kind of an interesting game, even with there not being a lot of points put up on the board in the first half. But Jaden Daniels had led this Washington team right down the field before half, and he found Terry McLaurin down the right side, who got in the end zone for a touchdown, extending their lead to 2 possessions. And with the Dallas Cowboys still down in the second half, they knew they needed to make some plays. And it turns out they came up big here with a fumble on the kickoff, taking the ball back and affording their offense an opportunity to take the lead. And with that opportunity, it led them to this 4th down and 2, where the Dallas Cowboys' new quarterback is pressured immediately and ends up taking a sack, not only ending the drive, but eventually the game and their season, as the Washington Commanders would go on to finish this game 14-9. So just like that, we're going to go ahead and sim to the playoffs for the following season to see if either of these teams have some better luck. And holy shit, these guys are weak. Somehow the Commanders went 4-13, probably because they're not really giving Travis Hunter the ball, as it's another season where he ends up as the 3rd leading receiver. But on the defensive side of the ball, he was playing extremely well, going for 92 tackles, 6 tackles for loss, and 4 interceptions. And Ashton Jeanty in his 5th season actually had a really good year, rushing for a little under 900 yards with 14 touchdowns, with almost 400 yards receiving and 3 TDs to go with it, resulting in him almost winning the best running back award as he comes in 3rd place. But Travis Hunter had actually gone on to win his first award, coming out on top as the best cornerback in the entire NFL. But with neither team having made it to the playoffs this year, it's time to see what they can do next year. But looking at the playoff schedule, it seems like both of these teams have again failed to make it. So we can go ahead and look at the season stats, but I realized that Terry McLaurin is not here. So I'm checking everywhere around the league because I assume he just got traded, but I don't know. Couldn't find him, he wasn't in free agency, he wasn't in retirement. But either way, even with him off the team, it doesn't seem like Travis Hunter is really living up to his expectations on offense. On defense though, he was still playing pretty decent as he came up with 72 tackles, but no interceptions this year. Now Ashton Jeanty though, in his 6th season had finally broken past that 1,000-yard threshold, coming up with a total of 19 touchdowns in the process, with an extra 377 yards receiving. And it was no surprise that we would eventually see one of these guys in consideration for the Offensive Player of the Year. But unfortunately for Ashton Jeanty, he did not end up winning any major awards this season, despite having the best season of his career. The following season, the Dallas Cowboys had finally made the playoffs. But looking at the season stats, Travis Hunter is actually getting worse and worse on offense, and it's kind of getting a little sad. But on defense, he was still one of the best cornerbacks in the league, though, as he led his team with 5 interceptions. Ashton Jeanty, though, seemed to be only getting better and better, scoring 11 total touchdowns with over 1,100 rushing yards, surpassing his season high from last year. Both Travis and Ashton have both yet to receive a single vote for MVP. Neither have won an Offensive or Defensive Player of the Year, and it was another season where Ashton Jeanty would finish 3rd in the best running back race. But I guess maybe to make him feel better, Travis had ended 3rd in the best cornerback race as well. Regardless, the Dallas Cowboys are ready for the playoffs, while the Commanders have apparently hit rock bottom. And get ready to see a familiar face, because the Dallas Cowboys are set to face off against Cam Ward and the Giants. And in a game that the Giants had controlled all throughout, the Dallas Cowboys had started to attempt a comeback at the top of the 4th quarter, kicking his field goal to make it a 1-possession game, and then getting right back down the field on this 4th down and 2, where the quarterback finds CeeDee Lamb open over the middle for a big first down. And on the very next play, their quarterback Conrad Norcutt had gotten the end zone for a touchdown. And Conrad is a crazy-ass name, by the way. But in the final seconds of the game, the Dallas Cowboys were driving down the field and getting themselves in position to score a game-winning field goal. With 12 seconds left, they trotted out their kicker, and he went out there and nailed this kick to send the Dallas Cowboys to the divisional round, as they went on to win this game 13-10. And somehow Ashton Jeanty only rushes for 15 yards. I don't know why they only give him 6 carries, but whatever. Because the Dallas Cowboys are ready to face off against an ascending Caleb Williams and the Chicago Bears. Now, this looked like a game where the Cowboys had control throughout the most of it. But in the most Dallas Cowboys fashion, of course they start letting their lead slip away, and by the end of this game, it was going into overtime, with Caleb Williams now having the opportunity to go down the field and put the game away, and it seems like he was taking it. On 2nd down and goal on this play action, Caleb Williams had delivered a strike to the end zone, scoring a touchdown that would end the Dallas Cowboys and Ashton Jeanty's season, as they went on to lose 17-23. And I'd probably say that it has something to do with Ashton only having 4 rushing attempts for -1 yards. Like, alright bro, like, what's going on with this? Whatever the case may be, we are now simming to the 8th season of Travis and Ashton. Now, going into his 8th season, Ashton Jeanty was still an 87 overall, which is where he remained over the past couple years. But somehow Travis had actually moved his way up as a receiver. I mean, I can understand cornerback because he's been the best cornerback in the league, but he's sitting right there at a 91 overall receiver. So I guess we're going to see how big of an impact this makes for the Commanders this year. And what the hell? Yo, how are they so bad? This doesn't even make sense. I guess they are in their 8th season, but it's kind of crazy to think that Ashton is still playing this well. Usually running backs fade out around this time in franchise mode. But Travis Hunter was still playing really well on defense while still being pretty mid to average to mid on offense. And it doesn't seem like he's making a big enough impact to get his team wins or get himself in consideration for any awards. On the other hand, Ashton Jeanty had once again finished top 3 in the best running back race. But now that we're getting deep into this, we're starting to see some pretty big names head off into the sunset. Goodbye Kenneth Walker, goodbye Lamar Jackson, goodbye Quinnen Williams. And we're now heading off into the 9th season while hoping that neither of these guys are on this list next year. But now finally in their 9th season, it seems like there's some interesting things going on, because you might notice a familiar face on the receiving yards leader, as Travis Hunter had finally broken out on offense with almost 1,400 yards and 11 touchdowns. Not to mention he's still playing at a high level on defense, so this is a nice little peak for his career. Now I went to go check Dallas's roster, but unfortunately, Ashton Jeanty was not there. So after checking around for a little bit, we find out that Ashton Jeanty has actually been traded to the Falcons, pairing up with another incredible running back, Bijan Robinson, in a season where Ashton had almost run for another 1,000 yards with 13 touchdowns. And I guess it's time to switch over to the Falcons because they are headed to the playoffs, where for the first time in their careers, Ashton Jeanty and Travis Hunter will be facing off in the first round. And in a game that was close all throughout with both teams battling up to the 4th quarter. It came down to a crucial drive with under 2 minutes left where Tua Tagovailoa was getting sacked by Micah Parsons. Bro, there's no way you missing Dan Quinn that bad. On the following possession, the Commanders also failed on their 3rd down, giving the ball right back to Atlanta with an opportunity to take the lead. And Ashton Jeanty and his new threads were ready to help them do it. Unfortunately, I don't think the rest of this offense was, because they failed to score and this game went into overtime. We're on this 3rd down and 24. For whatever reason, Tua Tagovailoa decides to take a sack in the end zone by Micah Parsons, where he would send his former teammate home packing for the offseason. as Washington would go on to win this game 16-14, and Travis Hunter and the Commanders are headed to the divisional round. Ashton Jeanty had an okay game, still needs to get more carries even with the new team, but Travis Hunter had showed out as the leading receiver for Washington, and also added 2 tackles on defense to go with it. But I guess at this point it's time to take over Washington because they have another playoff game against a reoccurring familiar face, Cam Ward and the Giants. And this game actually ended up being the most boring game that I've watched/not watched, as even during the simulation I was falling asleep because it ends up being a 7-3 ball game. Luckily, Washington had pulled it out, and they were headed to their first NFC Championship game in over 40 years, and led by Travis Hunter. They were about to face off against Jalen Milroe and the Los Angeles Rams. Now, unfortunately, this was a game where the Commanders found themselves down terrible in the second half. Now, they did begin to fight back, scoring multiple touchdowns in the fourth quarter, but in the end, they would end up losing the NFC Championship game 18-21. And in a game that Travis had played pretty well, I know he's disappointed to go out like this, especially since he was now heading into his 10th season, and somehow was still at his peak of a 91 overall, and had actually worked his way up to a superstar X Factor on defense. Now, Ashton Jeanty had peaked at an 87 overall, so far Travis Hunter had the lead on the first question. But then I started to realize something when I saw that I couldn't find Ashton Jeanty on the Falcons, and he wasn't on any other team in the NFL. I figured maybe he might have retired or something, but I still couldn't find him there. And it's kind of frustrating because I want to see what his career stats was. But I realized at this point that there's only one place that he could be. Ashton Jeanty going into his 10th season is an NFL free agent, and we all know what this means. So we're going to go ahead and sign him so we can take a look at his career stats for now. And just to let you guys know that there was no other team that picked him up after we released him back to free agency. So it was one hell of a career for Ashton Jeanty, and I can't help but think that somehow the Dallas Cowboys had hindered his growth. But I guess now we can just sim to the playoffs and focus on the remaining career of Travis Hunter. Now, unfortunately, Washington could not make the playoffs for a second straight season, but Travis Hunter was carrying on that momentum on the offensive end while still playing well on defense like he has all throughout his entire career. But Travis had yet to receive a vote for MVP, Offensive or Defensive Player of the Year, so his 10th season wasn't really anything to write home about. But now we can head into Travis Hunter's 11th season in the NFL, where we check the Commanders roster to look at his overall, and Travis Hunter is not there. Now, I don't think he retired at a 91 overall, so I went to go check out some other teams, and it turns out he got traded to the Bucs, taking his talents to Indian Rocks Beach at the age of 30 years old. And even at 30 years old, Travis is still playing exceptionally well considering he's still playing both sides of the ball, going for over 700 yards with 7 touchdowns off of 59 receptions. As far as some more retirements at the end of the season, goodbye Sauce Gardner, goodbye Derek Stingley, and goodbye Bryce Young. But now it's time to head into the 12th season of Travis Hunter's career, and we just want to check to make sure that Travis is still on the roster, and he is not. Now, once again, I don't think he retired, so I check around some other places, and it turns out he's on the Seahawks, sitting over there at an 89 overall, and is still a star. So at this point, we can go ahead and take over Seattle to see what Travis does throughout the rest of his career. And will you look what we got here. Travis Hunter is getting better as he gets older, kind of like what Ashton Jeanty was doing at one point, with Travis Hunter having led the league with 103 receptions, third in receiving yards with 1,300, and had 12 touchdowns to go with it. Yeah, not to mention that he's still playing defense, 5 tackles for loss, 2 interceptions, and 88 total tackles. And Travis Hunter had finally got some recognition for Offensive Player of the Year, but still didn't win it. And somehow he didn't even win Best Wide Receiver. So in probably what's the best season of his career, he walked away with no awards. So in case you haven't been counting, because there isn't really much to count, Travis and Ashton are still tied at 1 award apiece. But Travis has an opportunity to go out there and be the first one to win a Super Bowl, as he and the Seattle Seahawks are set to face off against Jalen Milroe and the Los Angeles Rams. And this was another game where I don't even know how this happens, but this game ended up 7-3, with the Seattle Seahawks fortunately taking home the victory, and Travis Hunter heads into the divisional round. And Travis Hunter actually had a good performance, getting their only touchdown. But now it was time to head into round 2, and this time they'd be facing off against the Philadelphia Eagles. And in a game that Philadelphia seemed to have control over throughout the majority of it, this game would end up coming down to the fourth quarter where the Seahawks were driving to tie it up. And whoever that Seattle quarterback was, he was out there delivering some dimes to get his team in great field position. And then the running back came out and had a nice run to bring him all the way down to the 10-yard line, where it seems like this is where Seattle would begin to struggle, because the quarterback ends up throwing a pick, handing the Philadelphia Eagles a 24-17 victory, as Travis Hunter closes out his 12th season in the NFL even though he played a really commendable game. But now looking at this list of retirees in the offseason, you're starting to see some random schmandom, so you can probably expect that Travis might retire soon. But now going into his 13th season in the NFL, Travis Hunter is still going strong with an 86 overall on offense and an 84 on defense. And heading over to the end of the year, he somehow managed to have over 1,100 yards once again, adding on 6 touchdowns to go with it, along with 75 tackles and an interception on defense. And although he once again didn't win any awards, he did help earn another playoff matchup against Cam Ward and the Giants once again. But it didn't seem like Seattle came into this game locked in at all because they were down 17 after halftime. They did begin fighting back towards the end of the fourth quarter, but Cam Ward would finally come out on top in a game over Travis Hunter. Another tragic way to end the season, but I have a feeling that he's going to have another opportunity because I don't think that he's going to retire. And lo and behold, he is right back in Seattle with an 83 on defense and an 81 on offense. So advancing to the playoffs just to see what his numbers were, and man, Seattle fell off. 5-12 after just making the playoffs. Jeez. Either way, Travis Hunter had put up over 700 yards and 5 touchdowns in his 14th season. Not to mention the 70 tackles, 2 tackles for loss, and 2 interceptions on defense. Still playing at a really high level for only an 81 overall. But it's time to head over to the next season. Travis Hunter's 15th season in the NFL. And when checking out Seattle's roster at the beginning of the year, it turns out that he's not there. I ended up finding Travis playing for the Indianapolis Colts at an 80 overall on defense and a 75 overall on offense. You definitely hate to see it, but at least he's not retired quite yet. So we're about to head over to the Indianapolis Colts to see out the rest of Travis Hunter's career. And as we advance to the playoffs, I'm not really sure what to expect from the Colts this year, but I guess 7-10 is not too bad. But if I'm being completely honest, it doesn't feel like Travis Hunter's going to end his career as a Super Bowl champion, especially considering that after being unable to find him on the roster, we end up finding him in free agency. So we signed Travis Hunter back to the roster just in case this is actually his last season in the NFL. And if it is, you can see that he had some pretty great seasons on both sides of the ball. But now we're heading to the offseason to see if this is actually the case, and it turns out that it is. Travis Hunter has officially retired from the NFL with the Indianapolis Colts. And as far as legacy score, it's saying that he's the 16th best receiver of all time, which I don't really know if I believe, but we'll go with that. But now that we are finally at the end of the road for both of these legendary players, we now have answers to those 3 questions of who ends their career with a higher overall, who wins the most championships, and who wins the most awards. The answer to the first question is Travis Hunter, as at the highest peak of his career, he was a 91 overall, while the highest Ashton Jeanty ever got to was an 87 overall. Neither player had ever even reached a Super Bowl, so they're tied at that. And both of these guys had become the best player at their positions once in their careers, splitting a tie at 1 award apiece. Now looking at their career stats, Travis Hunter was pretty lackluster early on as a wide receiver, but he began heavily picking it up later on as he racked up multiple 1,000 yards receiving. On the other hand, he had never stopped being an elite corner up until the day he retired. Now Ashton Jeanty, for only playing 9 seasons, actually had a really solid and underrated career, having 4 of his 9 seasons go for over 1,000 yards, and almost could have had 2 more as his 2027 season and his last year in the NFL, he was less than 100 yards from eclipsing 1,000. But this was the careers of Ashton Jeanty and Travis Hunter. I want you guys down below to let me know who you think had the better career. And if you want to see more content like this, be sure to hit the like button down below and subscribe to the channel. And don't forget to comment who else you guys want to see next. But you guys can check out some other stories/videos until the next one comes out. If you got to this point in the video, just know that I appreciate you more than you'll ever know. I hope all of your college football and NFL teams win this weekend. And other than that, I'm going to catch you guys next time.